Well, hello, folks out there in YouTube land. Got a very interesting show set up for you. Yep, the SEC Championship weekend, there are huge changes possibly coming, and it wouldn't surprise me a bit if this happened. And there are stories all about this, and they're definitely considering something along these lines. And Pete Nakos put this on X. It talks about the future of the college football playoff format and also what the SEC may possibly be doing for their big SEC championship weekend. Now, we've talked a lot about the financial situation at universities and, of course, athletic departments. And you know, starting next year after April 7th, when they finally conclude this deal, which is House versus NCAA, all these class action lawsuits have been lumped into that. And the agreement is that the athletic department is going to pay out about $20.5 million for revenue sharing for the players and all of that. Now, we've talked a bunch about that. And of course, they got to pay $2 to $3 million in back damages plus additional scholarships. Well, that's about $25 million plus, maybe as high as $30 million a year they've got to come up with if you want to compete. Now, you don't have to come up with all that 20.5, but you can also lose. You do have the option of just losing, which a lot of schools will have to do. But if you want to raise that 25 to 30 million bucks, there's got to be more games. And every university is thinking about this. And I know you're thinking they take in tons of money. Like the University of Tennessee took in, $240 million or whatever it was, 225. And Ohio State, who took in like 250, Alabama around 250. Kentucky took in 175. You'd think all that money, they can pay 20.5. Look, most of them are breaking even or probably losing money. And I'll give you a prime example. Ohio State, who just won a natty, they lost $37.7 million in the 2024 fiscal year. So teams are spending money like crazy. Look, these coaches that make $9, $10, $12 million a year, assistant coaches making $2, $3 million, and then a special teams coach makes $500,000. I mean, it's a lot of money. Then you got all the travel expenses. And on top of that, the football team that takes in all that money, they've got to cover all the sports that lose money. Basketball typically breaks even. They might make $1 or $2. They might lose. But every other sport loses money. I know that. I'm a former Division I player myself, and I didn't play football. I played on the golf team at the University of Tennessee, and we did nothing but lose money over there. That's what we did. Every team did. Tennis, even baseball, typically loses money. And then you've got all the female sports too. Those all lose money. It's just the way it is. So football's got to carry pretty much everybody else. And unless you want to just start dumping all the sports, you got to come up with more money in football because that's where people want to go.
Logical.
So the SEC is no different from everybody else. Where are they going to come up with the 25 million plus? So they're thinking about, instead of having one game, which is this year it was Texas versus Georgia, they're thinking about having either 3 or possibly 4 ball games. And the way they would do this is pretty simple. The first option, which would be 3 ball games, is this: 1 versus 2. Both those teams get into the college football playoff. Remember, we're talking about having 4 automatic bids for the SEC and 4 for the Big 10, and then 2 for the ACC and 2 for the Big 12, then plus Notre Dame plus a group of 5. That's your 12 teams is what they're working on doing, but they're looking at going to 14 or 16 for even more money. Well, let's say they do the 4 automatic spots for the SEC, and that would be in 2026 moving forward. How do you get those 4 spots? Well, if they go with this first option of 3 games, 1 versus 2, those 2 teams are automatically in. Then you'd have 3 versus 6, and then 4 versus 5, and that looks like this. This last year, you would have had Texas versus Georgia, both teams automatically in. Then Tennessee would have played South Carolina. Alabama would have played LSU. And the winner of these 2 games are also in. Georgia would have won the SEC championship. Texas would have been in because they finished first or second. And then Tennessee, and then whoever won these 2 games obviously would be 3 and 4 as far as getting in the college football playoff. Now, what does that do for the SEC? It triples the number of games. So the SEC championship weekend can have a whole lot more money for football. And that's why they're moving probably from 12 to either 14 or 16 games. I'm leaning towards 16 because they get more money for the college football playoff. There's also the possibility that the SEC might agree to a 9-game schedule if ESPN pays $5 million a team for that 9th game. And then if they do that, they've got a deal with Big Ten between Sankey and Petiti. They're all talking about this, that they would set up a Big Ten versus SEC matchup every year, and that would be a separate deal and more money. So they're trying to come up with the $25 million by having additional games or better games, more competitive games that the cable companies would pay more money for. And having a 3-game SEC weekend would make a heck of a lot more money than a 1-game. Now, there is the possibility of doing this, which would be 4 games. And I don't particularly care for this one, but they are discussing it. And that would be 1 versus 8, 2 versus 7, 3 versus 6, 4 versus 5. So Texas being number 1 would have played Ole Miss. But I don't like that, because if you're number 1 in the regular season and you get knocked out of the college football playoff by the number 8 SEC team, that's not right. I think 1 and 2 should get in. But this is, trying to make more money. They would have, again, Georgia would have played Texas A&M. We'd have played South Carolina, Alabama versus LSU. The winners of all 4 of these games would get into the college football playoff. Now, the one with 3 games makes some sense to me. I could see them going down that route, and that would be a heck of a weekend. That would draw a lot of people watching that in the SEC. Good grief. And it'd at least double the income they make off of it. It might triple it. The 4, I don't like that. Again, I think that's punishing teams that finished first. And you win the regular season, you shouldn't get knocked out of the college football playoff, because, let's say Ole Miss had a great game and you were off a little bit and you get knocked out. It just doesn't seem right to me. But anyway, this is the pressure that all of these schools are under, and Greg Sankey at the SEC, he's under the pressure too, because all the universities are wearing him out. We got to have more money. This NIL and now revenue sharing is changing the game across the board. And I know a lot of people won't like this, but I'm just telling you what they're talking about and what they may very well do for 2026 moving forward. It could definitely happen. I almost like that first one. 1 and 2 automatically get in, and then you've got the games underneath. 3 versus 6, 4 versus 5. That one intrigues me a lot. Anyway, I just wanted to keep y'all up to date on this stuff, and we'll kind of see how this plays out. I don't know if they'll do this or not, but boy, I tell you, I wouldn't be a bit surprised. They've got to come up with more money. It's just the way it is. And if you like this content, be sure to hit that like button. Let's me know. Continue to cover all these big college sports stories. If you've not subscribed, boom, boom, boom. Hit this little button right here. It won't cost you a dime. Help get my videos. And right over here is the most recent video that YouTube thinks you'll enjoy based on your viewing history. And we'll see you next time on Sports Talk Jay.
Well, come to see a fat old man sometime. Yeah!